Hey everybody, this is Marc Maron. I'm talking to Nate on the Vinyl Guide. It was exciting. It was informative. He told me some records I needed to get, but also you can watch my new HBO special From Bleak to Dark wherever you get those things.
Hey everyone, to celebrate Vinyl Guide episode 400, GrooveWasher.com and Vintage Media Grading have provided some huge discounts just for the next week or so. GrooveWasher.com is providing Vinyl Guide listeners 40% off all record cleaning fluids, and VMGVinyl.com is providing 40% off all grading services for sealed records. Both use discount code VG40, that's VG40, and that's just for Vinyl Guide listeners to celebrate episode 400. The GrooveWasher.com 40% discount goes away June 18th, and VMGVinyl.com discount goes away July 1st. That's GrooveWasher.com and VMGVinyl.com. Two awesome sponsors, one killer deal using discount code VG40. And now, on to episode 400. Holy moly, everyone, and welcome to show number 400 of the Vinyl Guide, the podcast for record collectors and music nerds. And today, we are celebrating this milestone of episode number 400 with a guest I've always wanted to have on. One of the very first names I wrote down when thinking about the type of people I wanted to invite onto the show and have some conversations about records, Mr. Marc Maron. Now, Marc, as you know, is a phenomenal comedian, actor, podcast host, and founder of the WTF podcast with Marc Maron. He's a tremendous influence on me long before the days of the podcast. Many, many years ago, when I was just a budding stand-up comedian, I was absolutely awed by Marc and those initial albums. Not sold out and tickets still available. Those were on very, very high rotation on my little iPod mini or whatever it was I had. His comedy is smart. It's articulate. He exhibits this tremendous vulnerability while also being sharp and surgical with his opinions and points. And lo and behold, he's also a record collector. So today, Marc and I talk all about his collection, the records that made an impression on him when he was young, the albums he buys repeatedly, what he's listening to today, Marc's record shopping routines, and a whole lot more. Look, it was my absolute honor to have Marc on the show today, and I truly hope everyone enjoys this conversation. Oh, and by the way, there is an extended audio and video version of this interview available only to show patrons at patreon.com/vinylguide. A whole extra big chunk of this interview, including this moment.
They just indicted our former president. I thought you should know.
Oh, what?
Yep.
That's right. While Marc and I were recording this interview, the news came in about the Trump indictment. So that spurred a whole nother thread of conversation, and that is only available to show patrons at patreon.com/vinylguide. You can listen in to the extended version of the audio, and you can even load up the video and see our handsome faces. And that's only for show supporters at patreon.com/vinylguide. Extended episodes, high-resolution audio files, commercial-free interviews, and more, only available at patreon.com/vinylguide. Please head up there now, help support the show, and we thank you in advance for your support. And finally, one last thing, make sure to follow the Vinyl Guide podcast in your podcast app. We have hundreds of other interviews with the likes of Jay Mascis of Dinosaur Jr., episode 393. Jason Bonham talks about his dad and playing at the Led Zeppelin reunion shows, episode 383. Chris Shiflett of Foo Fighters, episode 382. Kenny Jones of The Who, The Faces, The Small Faces, and More, episode 339. John Dwyer of The Mighty OCs, episode 331. Comedian, musician, and everyone's favorite stoner, Tommy Chong, episode 320. Robbie Krieger of The Doors, episode 306. Peter Frampton, episode 300. Tom Scholes of Boston, episode 297 and 298, and heaps more. Follow the Vinyl Guide in your podcast app. Scroll, download, listen, and enjoy for free anytime. All right, let's get into it. Let's nerd out on records on episode number 400 with Mr. Marc Maron. All right, ladies and gentlemen, show number 400. And I am absolutely thrilled to have on the show the patron saint of record nerds, Mr. Marc Maron. Marc, how are you doing? I saw you wince when I said that. What's up?
I'm good. I'm fine. I don't know that I am a true record nerd. I don't like, I always assume that anything that I get involved with, uh, I don't, I just know there's other people clearly that have a deeper knowledge and many more records than I do. Like Tom Sharpling is a true record nerd.
Mhm.
I don't know that I am.
Okay. All right. Is there a line where you say, okay, yes, I am, or no, I'm not?
Well, I think that for somebody to be a true record nerd, they had to be in it before everybody else was in it. And they had to, they're dealing with mostly uh, original pressings. And, they have a sense of what exactly is sought after in record nerd world.
Hmm. Okay. All right. I don't want to spend the whole day picking apart that argument.
Yeah.
But I think the definition of a record nerd is someone who gets deeply into it, spends a lot of their life around it, and is constantly seeking knowledge about it. I mean, it's probably, it's a kinder word than obsessive, but someone who spends a lot of their life around records and
Yeah, I
seeking
mean,
music.
I certainly go in and out of that, and I agree with you. I get it, but like, there's certain wisdom and knowledge that I don't give a shit about. Like, I'm not going to get involved, with numbers of pressings and, the place where it was pressed,
Mhm.
that kind of stuff. I'm not going to get, like I know a bad reissue when I hear it.
Mhm.
And I do like having original pressings if I can get them. And I know there are some things that have been reissued recently that are good. And yeah, but I don't get hung up with too much of the minutia in terms of seeking out, records. Like I like even now I've got I inherited a bunch of old Mobile Fidelities, which now they might not even be any good anymore. There's a big scandal around I don't know what year it started, but Mobile Fidelity was not using analog tape.
Right. But at the end of the day, if it sounds good, does it matter whether it's on analog tape or a digital source?
No, of course. I personally believe most Mobile Fidelity records do not sound that great.
Hmm. Okay.
What about you?
I think it depends on
Yeah.
the record itself.
Like if I go side by side, like Sticky Fingers, original pressing and the Sticky Fingers Mobile Fidelity, definitely just sounds better in its original form.
Hmm.
I don't know how they compress those things or even what the point of them is, but all of them sound too compressed to me.
Mark, you're sounding like a record nerd.
I
So you do that? You actively compare side by side, or do you? Is that
have
okay?
because I wanted to understand like what was wrong with my Mobile Fidelity records because I got like 40 or 50 old ones like Little Feet and Steely Dan, Stones. Like these were pre-scandal, Mobile Fidelity records. And I was just like kind of excited to get them. And then I put them on. I'm like, well, they don't really, I like a pretty poppy high end. And I don't know really what the process is of half speed mastering, but I just found all of the recordings, most of them were kind of dull compared to the original pressings.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, I don't make a whole lot of this Mobile Fidelity scandal, I guess. To me, Mobile Fidelity is a name that you either that you learn to trust or you don't really give much credit to because
Right.
at the end of the day, it's like a chef, okay? When I go in to get some food, I'm looking at that chef to make me something. And where they got the elements, if they got them at a high-end market or if they grew them in their backyard, I really don't care as long as the end product, is satisfying.
I guess so, but like there comes a point where, especially now, where there are definitely, you know, reissue houses that make bad records. And like, I've had to become relatively vigilant about that. And the only way I can determine that is if I do side by sides, like Four Men with Beards, bad reissues.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way I know that is I played once I got an original copy of The Idiot against their reissued Idiot, or not Idiot, Lust for Life,
Hmm.
the Iggy record. I'm like, oh, it's bad. And you don't know where they get their source material. I get what you're saying. Am I just rambling? Did you have
No,
questions? What do you want? What
I
do you
do
want
have
to?
I do have questions, but all this is kind of baked baked in. Are there labels that you actively follow? Like, oh, they put out this reissue or this particular band I never heard of, but because the label is on it, I'm going to take a chance.
Sometimes, I mean, when I started getting, re-engaging with vinyl, I don't remember. It's got to be over a decade ago. And getting into sort of better equipment, and I was being sent a lot of stuff from labels of all kinds, just sort of like hoping that I either would mention it or wanted to turn me on to it. So there was a lot of labels sending me stuff. Some of them, minor labels, some of them weird punk labels, regional punk labels, some of them bigger labels like Paradise of Bachelors and Numero Group and Light in the Attic. And, you know, right now Craft Recordings is doing some good stuff. And was it Sundance or Sun-Dazed Records do
Yeah.
some pretty good reissues. There are things like when I'm looking at records and I see the label that either put them out, but sometimes you don't even know who reissued them or whether I need my record store guy to tell me that. But there's some like those, like I'll look at Light in the Attic stuff. Sometimes they're a little too Lee Hazelwood heavy for some reason, and they get hung up on things. You know what I mean? But Numero Group does a lot of interesting stuff. I got a few of their boxes around,
Yeah, yeah. That's a
and
label that whenever they come out with something, I pay extra attention to it. Even if I've
yeah,
never heard
because
it, it's like, okay,
right.
well, yeah.
Most of the time, though, you're not going to have heard it. A lot of times, some of it's out there kind of stuff, or And then there's some labels that were reissuing these like weird, you know, kind of like these holy grail, small release records, that I've gotten a few of, and I like that kind of permanent records. Out here in Los Angeles, Lance does some interesting reissues of sort of small press stuff. Hard, he's got a whole series of
The brown acid and
Brown Acid series. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, but he does a bunch of those collections. I got into that for a little while, and some of that he turned me on to some of that stuff. But lately, I just got something from Craft Recordings, and like some jazz labels send me stuff. There's a guy who only does record store day releases, and he finds these very interesting live performances of jazz records. I forget, is it called Resonance? Maybe is the name of the
Mm.
label. Um, but Craft
Oh,
Rec,
you're talking the Zev Feldman, the jazz detective.
yeah, that might be
Yeah,
right.
yeah, he's the
Yeah,
one. He
yeah.
digs up all these rare tapes from around the world and stuff like
Yeah,
that. Yeah, yeah. Have you had him on your show?
no,
He's
but he
fascinating.
sends me shit sometimes.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so like I'm hip to like some of those labels and like Craft Recordings. They just sent me that Watt Stacks
Mm.
box with the full concert on it. So like I'm always happy to get free stuff, and if I don't like it, I just go trade it for other stuff.
Okay. So you go your local shops. I think are Gimme Gimme, Permanent, and I know Dan and Lance. Those guys are like doctors. You go in there and they write you a prescription for whatever you need. You got to take that sort of guidance. Do you shop
Yeah.
other places, or are those kind of your two main go tos?
Those are the main go-tos, and I wasn't shopping at Gimme for a while because during the pandemic, Lance was sort of locked into a reissue thing, and he put stuff online on Instagram, and like, by the time I'd see it, it was already gone, especially if it was original stuff. But I was over there recently to do a show. He's got a bar now,
Hmm.
and they've got a performance small stage, and they do outdoor shows, and he's got the record store down at the bottom of the hill behind the bar. And I was just in there for the first time in a couple of years, and he's got a lot of good shit. But Dan is a friend of mine. Like him and I go, we go on hikes together and stuff, and I get hip to what he's doing. And his taste is, they're both very different in what they focus on. Dan, Lance is definitely an international minded psych rock garage dude. He knows his shit about everything, but he really knows his shit about that stuff. And
Hmm.
Dan is more like Dan's really deep jazz head and country and kind of he's got an interesting sensibility, but they're very different. But I tend to be at Dan's more often.
Yeah, Dan will let you know which Lee Hazelwood to start with if you.
Yeah, like sometimes with Dan, I'm just sort of like, nah, it's not going to happen.
When you walk into the shops, like what's your first? Do you go to new arrivals? Do you look at the wall? Kind of how do you go about your record shopping experience?
I always go, like, I usually go to new arrivals, and I don't go into the bins too much. Because I usually know, and Dan will pull shit for me too. But I usually go into new arrivals, and then I'll look at the wall because usually I have a credit, and sometimes, like, there's jazz stuff that I'll buy off the wall. I don't buy a lot of rock off the wall. I have, but sometimes, like, I notice that, like, I just keep seeing the same stuff, and then I've got to sort of branch out somehow. Like, I'm kind of like, I feel like my collection is a little too, I don't know, I need more R&B and soul. The jazz is growing, but it's not huge. My country is, a little, it's okay. It's not great. I was telling Dan, because I recently separated the country from the rest of it. And there's only a couple hundred records there. And Dan said, I've got like a couple hundred George Jones records.
So how do you organize your records? Okay, you mentioned, I think in one of our conversations, it was you got about 3,000 records, something like that, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. How do you separate them? How do you file them?
Well, in here, I've got a system upstairs here in the office, and there's a rack right here that's just all comedy records. It's probably there's probably like a couple hundred comedy records. You don't listen to a lot of comedy records, but I collect them. I pick them up here and there. You know what I mean? So they're all on this rack. And I've got a system up here. I've got a Marantz, what is it, 20... I got a Marantz 2275 up here with a project turntable and some new Klipsch Heresies. And I listen to the jazz up here now because the jazz is right outside the door here. I separated the jazz. So the jazz is separate, comedy separate, country is separate. Compilations and soundtracks are out here.
Mm-hmm.
Up here, a few. I don't have that many 7-inches. They're just, I don't even know why I have them. So it's mostly downstairs is everything else.
Okay.
Blues, R&B, rock, and conceptual stuff that isn't jazz. That's downstairs.
Can you find anything you're looking for pretty quickly, or is
it's all
okay.
alphabetized. Yeah.
Okay.
But I don't. That's not the problem. The problem is I don't know what I have all the time. I think that's a bigger problem for people who buy records. If you don't have a catalog somewhere, sometimes you'll end up buying the same record twice, 3 times.
Is there a record that you constantly buy multiple copies of? I mean, willingly or otherwise?
Yeah. Blue Mask. Lou Reed, Blue Mask.
Mm-hmm.
And for a while there, I was buying Planet Waves wherever it would come up.
Every orphan copy you would bring home with you.
Yeah. And Tonight's the Night, the Neil Young record. I got a few of those. They were just early on these records that seemed reasonably hard to find. Planet Waves is not a pricey record, but no one seems to really give a shit about it. And it's like, it's a kind of an amazing record. So I just decided at some point I'm gonna need a few of those because I'll probably have to give some away.
Okay, is that what you do? Like you'll get an orphan copy and find someone that you think may benefit.
Well, if I'm like, do you know this record? They're like, not really. I'm like, well, here,
Yeah,
I'll do that sometimes. And the Blue Mask, I don't know why I amassed that one. It's not an easy one to find, really. Doesn't come around much.
Are there any holy grails you're looking to find? Anything that you don't have part of your collection that you hope you find soon?
Well, after a certain point, it's like podcast guests. It's like I don't really know. I don't. There's a lot of things I don't know. Like I'm relatively a completist with some things, but I don't know a lot of old records. Every once in a while I'll see one, I'll be like, do I have it? Do I need it? Like, like yesterday, a couple of days ago, Dan was like, did you need, John Cale's Fear record? I'm like, no, I actually have that one, and so I don't know what the holy grails would be, but I'm open to, most things and sort of, getting new stuff. Mm-hmm. But I don't really have a holy grail.
Are you particular about first pressings or anything?
No, I mean, I'd like to be, but I don't even, like I said, I don't get that deep into it. If it's, I do have some jazz. I'm sure I have plenty of rock first pressings, but sometimes with those, like, what is it? Those Columbia jazz records. What is it? The Six Eyes or Five
Oh,
Eyes or Three
yeah,
Eyes?
6i and 2i.
Yeah, I got some of that stuff, and I get that off the wall. I'll ask Dan, why is that so expensive? And they'll say it's a price, and I'm like, it's cool to have those, So I have some, but I'm not necessarily particular about it. But if I've got the money or I've got the credit and it's on the wall, I'll get it, you know. But then sometimes I get like I've got a promo copy of the Pharoah Sanders Karma record,
Hmm.
and somebody just reissued that, and I got hold of it. So now I have two of those. But sometimes you don't want to play the really good one. And if the reissue's good enough, you just play that.
Okay. So you haven't compared those side by side yet.
I haven't yet. I
Okay.
should.
Uh-huh.
But sometimes also, like, it's hard to find mint copies. And sometimes, like, aging records get, you can't always see, even if it looks good on the surface, right? The grooves can be kind of worn out.
Hmm.
And sometimes they get a very thin sound to them. And some great records also don't necessarily sound as great, no matter how good it connects, how good the pressing is. It's kind of weird, like if you grow up in a certain era, and there was a ceiling to the quality of technology at the time, you get used to the sound of something not
Hmm.
being so clean, and it was also recorded differently. And then you listen to it as a grown up on good equipment, you're like, this doesn't sound that great.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you had this experience recently. They had the reissue of Pink Floyd Animals.
I love that.
The remix. You've got the remix of it, yeah?
I haven't. There's a
2018?
remix.
Okay, so check this out. In 2018, James Guthrie, the Pink Floyd mastering guy, he went back into the multi-track tapes, remixed Animals, and they only just put it out on vinyl. And it sounds, certainly to my ears, and a lot of people tend to agree, it is like the definitive version of Animals, which is my
Really?
favorite Floyd record. Yeah. Now, if you think about it, in '77, when they recorded Animals, they were actually very rushed when they did the mixing. So, even the best quality of 1977 pressing, to me kind of pales in comparison to this 2018 mix. And
But did he change? But how much did he? Because look, I got that remastered Abbey Road, and it's weird. I'm not saying it's not great, but it's weird.
it's different than your brain's used to. Is that it? You've heard it so many times that
Well,
you
they're
just
adding
can't do
things
anything?
in that weren't really there, or they were there, but you just couldn't hear them the same way. So they're shifting it. Like, I understand that original intention is relative to technology available,
Hmm.
right? But a lot of times, none of the artists are necessarily involved in this updated mix of the thing. So, like, what you're hearing is something different, but is it the artist's vision? I don't know. I always had this feeling about bootlegs too. I don't listen to, not bootlegs, but these demo copies. I mean, historically they're interesting, but Dylan he would put out all the demos, and it's like I like hearing them, but I'm kind of attached to the record itself. Like I do, like I've got like six albums of Iggy, six like hours and hours of the Funhouse studio
Yeah.
sessions, and it's like, how many versions of that almost getting there do you need to hear?
Well, demos are a different thing. To me, demos are, yeah, they're for historian almost. You
Right,
listen to
exactly.
it, it's like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah,
Now
yeah, yeah.
let me hear the real version of Dear Prudence.
Right. Well, what do you think of that? But what do you think of that Abbey Road remix?
I haven't dove deep and really compared. So I think maybe you're just maybe you're inspiring me to really do a deep dive headphone, because yeah, I don't have that much of an opinion on it.
Oh, because like to me, it seemed like there was whole guitar parts that were brought up to the foreground. It was kind of an amazing experience to listen to it, a first play on my system. I had Sharpling over here, and there were like four or five of us listening, and it was kind of like mind blowing,
Hmm.
and it definitely, there's a lot more filled in than the original Abbey Road, which is kind of amazing. It was a pretty uh, uh, cathartic experience to listen to it.
Hmm.
I haven't listened to it again though. But this Pink Floyd thing, what did they, what did they, what did they do to it?
Look, I can't speak to what the technical things that they did in the studio were. But I mean, to me, the sound is, I think, much more rounded. The instruments, you could hear you could isolate them a bit more. They're clearer. It seems to have better fades in and out because there's a lot of the, like in Dogs, the vocal to the synthesizer. It just sounds like much more pleasing to me and again, I spent decades listening to that record, and to hear this new version, I absolutely think it's an upgrade. But they also keep the 77 version available for the purists. So
they've reissued it with another copy of the 77 version.
I think they have the deluxe version of it that has both.
And this just came out.
About a year ago, almost a year ago.
Oh man!
But
I gotta go find it.
You could buy the standalone version of it, for $30. I'm sure Dan or Lance will have one, but.
Oh, yeah. I got to get it. I love that record.
They remixed it in 2018, and I believe all the members of Pink Floyd were somewhat satisfied with the mix, but they spent 3 years bickering back and forth about liner notes.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, the whole drama that's around Pink Floyd these days.
Well, yeah, Roger Waters is full of drama.
Yeah, he seems to be the instigator. But your thought of remixes, you tend to get excited about them when you hear, favorite albums?
I tend to I tend to be snotty about them, really, because there's part of me, having lived as long as I have, and that I have bought some of these records, at least 5 times, vinyl in high school, cassette in high school, CD, and then, a vinyl again. So after a certain point, how much of it is an evolution or an improvement and how much of it is just a racket, right? So that's what I get into. It's like, I'm going to buy this album a 6th time because of the format change or a remix or whatever. You know what I mean?
Well, you must love it if you're buying it multiple times. You want one in
the car.
Sure,
you love a record, but I listened to some of those remastered Led Zeppelin records and they were good. You know what I mean? They were good, but I still want to listen to the original ones.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of those?
In the Led Zeppelin remasters, I think the value of those is the listening to the demos once, the remixes once. There wasn't a lot of leftovers. There wasn't like alternate vocal takes on many songs.
Yeah.
To me, the huge benefit of those remixes is the books that come in the box sets. I love that. And putting them on and just going through the book, the revisiting the original Houses of the Holy, to me, that didn't need to happen. And I didn't see a marked improvement in that, but it was the story around it and the ephemera that could be connected to it in the box.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I didn't like the Exile on Main Street reissue remaster. It was okay. And I didn't like the new songs that they put in there. It just, because that record is so kind of raw feeling, the original one, it's like, just don't fuck with it, man.
Yeah. And you're not going to find any really great outtakes. They're left out for a reason.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah. All the, the extra material. I don't know. I don't sit, maybe I should take more time and really sit with all this stuff and do it. I just got that Stones Oma Combo Club album that they just put out, and it's pretty great. But it's not like a reissue. It's never been out before. But Keith just reissued Main Offender. And again, if you like ephemera, that's loaded with it.
Mm.
What else did I get? I got a Albert Eiler box over there that just came out.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I tend to I get the boxes and I don't get into them. I've got both Beatles boxes and I don't think I touch them. They're up there. I got the Bob Dylan.
You got the new Revolver one whenever?
No, I didn't get that, but I got the Beatles mono and the Beatles stereo, all the 12.
Oh, that's all you need. That's all you need right there.
Right.
Yeah.
I got both of them. I got Dylan. I listened to that one, that Winterland, the full Winterland concerts, the Jimi Hendrix one. That's pretty good.
Mate, I bought that. Yeah, that is my favorite Jimi Hendrix era. And 2 months ago, I had
What is that, Banded Gypsies?
Banded Gypsies. I listened to all 8 records. I didn't get tired of it once. It was just gorgeous.
Yeah.
Absolutely gorgeous.
It's great. That's a great box.
What's the most you ever paid for a record?
Oh, that's a good question. I feel like probably like in the 150 range.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't remember what it is. It was probably a jazz record. It was probably one of those 6 eyes. Yeah, you know what I mean?
You walk into the record shop all flush with credit.
Yeah.
Big
like,
man in the shop. Oh yeah. Let's go to the
the credit, like it's not the same as money. You know what I mean? It's just an evolving barter thing, you know, where you're like, well, this was just records before, now it's just fewer records. Like taking many records and making them fewer.
How many records do you get on an average month?
I don't know, man. You know, I had to hang back a little bit because I got to listen to them, you know? Like there's records that like I have that I didn't listen to. Like I just like first, I don't even know where I got that, you know, the American Epic. You know that one?
Oh yeah.
The American Epic Sessions.
Yeah.
I think that's a Jack White experiment with an old machine, right?
Oh yeah. They rebuilt one of those old 78 recorders.
Yeah, with the weights, you know, like yeah, and you know, it's kind of interesting, like you know, and I just started listening to that. I've got this Mingus reissue, a modern jazz symposium of music and poetry with Charlie Mingus, so like what ultimately what I'm saying is like,
you need more time.
well, yeah, I mean, I kept amassing records, and it just gets ridiculous. It's a compulsion. You're just sort of like, well, I got nothing to do. I'm going to go over to Dan's, and I leave with like 6 or 7 records, 10 records, and then I put them there, and then I have to get to them, and then I get the records I get sent to me. Some of them are indie records by just people sending me the records that they made, but I'll usually give them at least a once over, one time spin, but then it's a lot of records. You know what I mean? Like yesterday, I just started listening to that new Wilco record because I got it over at Dan's, and I got a Billy Strings record that, like, you know, I got these are relatively new records. I was usually getting, I think I was up to, you know, getting like at least 20 or 30 records a month, but I had to pull back so I could listen.
Yeah. I go through phases of guilt. I'll get a lot of records and then I'll realize, like, you know, I'm not really listening to these like I should. And then,
yeah. So what are you doing? You're just amassing records.
Yeah. And I, you know, probably not as many as you do, but I get people sending me records. And I always tweet them or put them on, you know, anyone, especially independent artists who put their money down to get a record pressed. I'm going to give them some love somehow, social media or something. And then if they start collecting dust, I'll give them away to people who I think, you know, at different record fairs, kids run around, and I'm like, all right, how old are you? All right, you ever hear Van Halen? Here, take this, you know?
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, you know.
Yeah, I have a lot of those records that I had in high school that I replaced, you know, that I'm happy I have, you know, the Van Halen.
Do you have any of your original ones, the ones that you
I do, yeah.
Okay.
I do have a lot of them. I have that Tom Petty first Tom Petty record from all the way from high school.
Yeah, you carry
somebody just
boxes, all the places you moved.
Yeah, it's kind of hung around. I don't know where they were for a while. I'm trying to remember. They were in storage somewhere, and I think I have my Nighthawks at the Diner is from high school. I was just somebody just returned a record that they took from me probably in 8th grade. Was Bowie Changes One. Like a guy I knew in junior high, he lives out in Denver. He gave me that record back, and it's got my name on it. So I'd written my name on it. So that's kind of found its way back, you know, from whenever the hell that was, the 70s, mid 70s.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's wild. But I had this weird haul from when I was in high school, there was a record store next door, Budget Tapes and Records. It was owned by this couple, a mixed, like she was white and he was a black dude. And there was primarily an R&B store. That's what they played in the store. But they were a regular record store, right? So they had this box of promos that they just weren't playing in the place. And she gave it to me. And a lot of that box, like, was kind of defining. That store had a big impression. I mean, in that box, I think was that Tom Petty record. It was that Tom Waits record, Elvis Costello's first record. Like it was George Thorogood's first record. There's a weird box of a weird time, but it was stuff I would never have heard. And then like the guy who worked there, Steve LaRue, he was like an experimental musician, like an art rock guy. And that guy turned me on to The Residents, Brian Eno, John Hassel, Fred Frith. Like this was his wheelhouse. So like I was 15, in the middle of Towny Rock, New Mexico, and that guy's feeding me all this stuff and getting me hip to that. And then there was another guy there, Jim Regan, who was like an old R&B guy. And I went to his house and, we spent like a few hours just making this giant mixtape of all the old R&B guys for me. And between that and my father's sort of like love for, the oldies, when I was growing up, that his music, like on the American Graffiti soundtrack and Dick Clark's 20 Years of Rock and Roll record. And there was the oldies show on Sundays, from 6 till noon. Like that was really what laid the foundation of my brain. That and my guitar teacher, who was like when I was 12 or 13, who was a blues guy, he turned me on to, Sonny Terry and Brownie McGee and Muddy Waters. And like, it was a weird education then.
When did you discover Zappa?
We'll be back after these messages.
There's no doubt about it. Record collecting has become a serious hobby and even an investment for many around the world. So record collectors have to ask themselves how best to protect their prized records and confidently buy and sell with others. There is an option to consider: vintage media grading at vmgvinyl.com. vmgvinyl.com will professionally grade your record and encase it in protective plastic, so your record will retain its value for decades to come. This is the same approach that comic book and sports card collectors have done for years. Now, I know many record collectors will be horrified with the thought of having their records graded and encased in plastic. And for the majority of records, this isn't necessary. But if you have top dollar records that you need to protect, maybe a super rare album that's languishing on the shelf, a one-off misprint, or a special LP that you want to protect, look up vmgvinyl.com, Vintage Media Grading, and see if this service is right for you. That's Vintage Media Grading, vmgvinyl.com.
Hey everyone, I'm here to talk to you about Seems Easy record sleeve repair strips. Ever find a record in a used bin where the vinyl is gorgeous, but the sleeve has this ugly split and is even falling completely apart? Well, that's okay. Grab it anyway, because with Seems Easy record sleeve repair strips, you can fix that right up. Seems Easy record repair strips repair seam splits from the inside, so it doesn't affect the appearance of a record sleeve, but it does make it functional again. With Seems Easy, records can now slide in and out like new. Turn a $5 record into a $25 functioning collectible. Just ask your local record shop for Seems Easy strips, and if they're not in stock, go to seamseasy.com. That's Seems Easy with 2 Z's. Seems Easy record sleeve repair strips. Seems easy because it is. Oh, and hey, record nerds, don't forget to clean your records with the very best and safest record cleaner, the Groove Washer. Make your records look and sound their very best and store them with confidence using the new Groove Washer Groove Guard record sleeves. You gotta try this out. It makes a huge difference to the quality of your vinyl experience. Ask for the Groove Washer by name at your local record store and accept no substitutes. Or head over to groovewasher.com and use discount code VINYLGUIDE10.
All hail the Groove Washer.
That's groovewasher.com, discount code VINYLGUIDE10.
Now we return to the program, already in progress.
No limits.
When did you discover Zappa?
Well, that was sort of later. Like I always knew he existed. And I had a friend in high school who was sort of a Zappa fan. But, so Joe's Garage came out when I was in high school. So there were hits on that. So that was really my first introduction to Zappa, right? Was Joe's Garage because there were hits. And also I think there was hits on Chic Your Booty.
Yeah.
So that's when I first I learned about him, but it wasn't until later that, and I dated Moon for a bit. And, I started amassing Zappa records, in this last turn of the vinyl thing. And then I really started to dig into those early records not that long ago, so, like I started to really listen to Hot Rats and Reuben and the Jets and, Lumpy Gravy and we're only in it for the money. Like a lot of those first ones, I really started to listen to around the same time I started to try to understand Beefheart, but it wasn't that long ago. It wasn't a childhood thing. It was definitely a grown-up thing. I'm late to the party on most things.
Are you a completist? Like if you discover an artist, do you find yourself kind of buying up all their catalog?
Well, if it's reasonable. I mean, I can't be a completist with Zappa. I mean, you can have to have a whole separate room, but I have a lot of them. I mean, it's easier to be a completist with some of the people I grew up with, but even some of them, I stopped sort of short. Like, I don't really care that much about AC/DC post Back in Black. I don't really care about Aerosmith, post, only those first 5 records, so I'm a completist relative to, what's important to me. But then there are, like I probably have all the Beatles albums twice. I have most of the Rolling Stones. I probably got all the Dylans. There are, the Royal Trucks. Yeah, there's weird things that I have most of the records on. Like Ann and Duel, I probably have all those for whatever reason. The Kraftwerks. Yeah, I mean, I'll try to do it if it's not 100 records. Like I probably have all the Can records, and that's no small task.
No. And actually a lot of the Krautrock. Can we say Krautrock? I'm assuming
yes.
You can. That music is music that I can hear and appreciate and still do other stuff at the same time. Or type or something like that. I think anything with vocals, that tends to pull me away from something. So I have to focus on it. But with But with
I like all that Krautrock stuff, and and I got a lot of it. I like it a lot, and I listen to that stuff. And I also got sort of into like those early UFO records. Those are kind of good. They're kind of almost Krautrocky,
Oh, okay.
You ever listen to that stuff?
Not in many years, but one thing I just got, and this record shop in Las Vegas turned me on to it. Moondog, Scorpions' Lonesome Crow. Have you gotten into? Oh yeah, absolutely. It's with Uli John Roth in the band, and it is very different than the Scorpions that I think a lot of people.
Yeah, I'll check it out. Like this stuff, the UFO stuff from the 70s is killer.
Yeah. Now, speaking of your show, you had that episode with the McIntosh amp.
Yeah.
I thought, you know what? I bet you that's from absolute life experience, and I wonder if that McIntosh amp is still in Marc's house.
Not that one, but I did get one. Like that equipment that they lent me was not really the equipment that I would want. But I do have a 275, and I've got that CR whatever, that kind of retro analog preamp they put out. What was that called? See, this is how terrible I am at really remembering the shit I have. It's kind of ridiculous, but it's like I don't remember which one it is. I could go down and look, but no, I did get the equipment. I had a McIntosh turntable for a while, but they're not that great. So I had it and I got rid of it. That whole system was kind of stunning to look at because of all the green lights. They made all these rack components, but I definitely ultimately opted for older style stuff. And that turntable, there was too much metal in it. It would interfere with the stylus. So I've got a Riga 6 down there with a Hama cartridge, which was recommended to me. But I did get those Wilson, or no, the Carina speakers. Oh my God, now I'm spacing it out. What have I got? Tell me, somebody.
Now are you kind of a bit of a stereo buff, or do you have someone that just says buy this, and you kind of snap it together?
Well, I mean, look, I'm not going to do. I've got the Wilson. What are they called? They're crazy. The Sabrina X. Those are crazy speakers. That's the most money I spent on anything, stereo wise. And I never thought I'd go in for that. No, I'm not. I don't do a lot of research. I've got people I trust over at Sound. What's it called? Audio Element. His parents, his dad used to have a place called Brooks Burdam, but he passed, so he's got a place, and they deal with the high end stuff. And look, man, it took me a long time to I went through a lot of different tube stuff and a few different speakers to sort of land on something. I didn't have much luck with a lot of the different components. It took me a lot of too much money and a lot of trial and error to get to where I am now with this stuff. But I'm not, the fucking thing about it is, man, is that what I realize is that there's no ceiling to how much you can spend on high-end audio, but it's all relative to your dumb ears. Anything you can put $500,000 into a system, but it's got to go through your faulty fucking old ass ears. So like, what are you really doing? Like, whatever you're being charmed by, it's going to level off, not from fatigue, but it just is what it is. It's exciting, but eventually you're going to get used to it. And either you're going to feel like, oh no, I got to keep upgrading, or you're just going to say like, well, this is it. This is good. This is good enough. So, but I've got two distinctly different systems, and they both are great. Like I got these heresies up here with this old,
Riga.
No, this is a project turntable with that old Marantz solid state. So I got all tubes downstairs, and I got solid state up here with these. And clips are up front. They don't do a lot of imaging, but it's like it's old school, man. But it's good. And downstairs, I got those expensive Wilsons that do the imaging where shit is floating and it almost feels like they're in the room with you. And that's cool. Like, I don't know how it works. I always thought it was sort of a trick, but I grew to like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk about comedy records, because you said you've got quite a collection of comedy records. Thinky Pain in 2014. Actually, a lot of your records are actually quite collectible. I'm not sure if you're aware of that.
Yeah, because they never were really released.
Well,
they were printed, they were pressed, but the only reason, like, I had nothing to do with any of that, really. It's a weird thing. Like, being as much of a vinyl guy as I am, mid-level vinyl nerd, is that I never, released any of my own records. Like, they were released by Netflix in order to make them viable for Grammy nominations. So there was never a very big pressing of any of those records. Like, Thinky Pain is around, but they're not, you can't get them. They probably go for $40 or $50.
North of that, definitely.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. You're approaching 70, 80, maybe $100. If it's autographed. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they're hard to find. I mean, I've got a few, but I don't think they made more than 500, really. And I've got N Times Fun, maybe Too Real. I've got some of those too. Same thing. There's only a few hundred of them around. I don't know if we did. Do we do N Times Fun on vinyl?
We did it. N Times Fun. Yeah, there were 1,000, as I understand, of those.
Oh, all right. Yeah. So I mean, I can understand why they're hard to find, but they are just the special that was on Netflix. Yeah. I should do something with this one I just did with HBO. Maybe get a label to get involved. 'Cause eventually, I sort of own them. The one of them I own, and I don't think I ever put it out on vinyl. The problem with comedy in general is it gets dated pretty quickly. But most of the records, most of the specials I do, I sort of go out of my way not to hinge them too much to dateable things. I think End Times Fun politically is probably dated, but this new one isn't. And I don't think Thinky Pain really is. That's a long set, that Thinky Pain. That's got to be a couple of pretty full records.
Did you get the whole set of Thinky Pain on vinyl, or were there bits that you had to throw out just for the space?
No, I think it's all on there.
Okay.
There's probably 3 records on that thing. I don't think I have.
Hang on. Huh? I got one. It's 2.
What's the running time?
You're making...
It's probably like 90 minutes.
Yeah, it's 2 records. Let's see.
That's kind of a good set.
Yeah.
That's all right. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
That's got all that Beefheart stuff on there. I like that set. There's a lot of stuff on there.
And when I saw this, and this came out 2014, so the whole vinyl revival thing was still very kind of new and fresh. And to me, I thought it was quite. I thought it was innovative, but also, because we hadn't seen comedy records in a long time.
Yeah.
And I thought that was, so that was more of a decision for the Grammys. I always assumed that like Mark, he's a vinyl guy. This is something that was done either for him or by his hand.
I'm sorry to disappoint you. I did, approve of the artwork, and I was part of that. But I like, what's the label on it? It's probably Netflix, right?
Comedy Central Records.
Oh, I did do that one.
Okay. Like, what did you do for it? Did you how involved were you in the production of that, the manufacturing?
Well, I had a deal with Comedy Central Records. I forgot about that, but I don't feel like we finished it off. And I think maybe the sort of deal with Netflix was different. I don't remember how that worked, because that was early on when Netflix didn't really have a comedy department. There was just one person there, this woman who was, doing these specials. It was so different. They didn't have anything engaged. So we must have carved out the rights to do that record, because I had a deal to do 3 records with Comedy Central Records. And I don't know that we did them. Like, there's several albums out, but not too many on vinyl. I had the guy at Stand Up Records, Dan Schlissel. We were going to do a box set, but we just never got around to it, because I just thought it was it would have been such a limited pressing, but also limited appeal kind of thing. Because how many records do I have out? Like, I've got the trilogy, which is not sold out, tickets still available, Final Engagement. Those 3. And then I've got This Has to Be Funny. And then Thinky Pain. But and then More Later, Too Real, End Times Fun, and then the new one. It's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But I think only End Times Fun, Thinky Pain, and Too Real are available on vinyl.
Okay, Bleak to Dark. No vinyl plans for Bleak to Dark yet.
No, but I think I could probably get that one done. I think we have discussions. I think that's a good one to do, because it is. There's a lot of evergreen stuff on there, and I think we were kind of looking at labels. I think I told them. I know that Secretly Canadian at one time wanted to do a record with me, and it never happened. And Drag City, like, I wanted to do a record with them, but they were unwilling to put me on their main label, and they would have put me on their secondary label. And I was like, go fuck yourself. Like, I'm not cool enough for Drag City. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That bummed me out. I got mad at those guys.
So you've also done the record In the Garage, the live music from WTF.
That's a rare record. How much is that going for?
That one's actually a little bit more attainable. I think they printed a whole bunch of them for Record Store Day.
Oh, yeah.
Those are $20-$30.
Yeah, kind of minimally, poorly recorded, big songs by famous people.
I like the performances. I think I was missing the Bob Mould version of The War that he did on your show. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were thinking about putting together another one. I think we might have put some of them out in the bonus content. Did we?
I don't know. But look, if anyone's listening and they want to hear an amazing version of Bob Mould's The War that he did on WTF, it's out on YouTube. I dial it up every couple months and enjoy it a dozen times in a row.
It's not out there. It's that thing that Billy Gibbons did. That was so excellent.
Mm-hmm.
That Ballad of Billy the Kid that he did on that cigar box guitar with the slide. I fucking love that thing.
I had Billy on our show, and he was calling in from the desert, and we had a good conversation. Turns out that he was out visiting Dusty in the final days.
Oh, really?
Yeah. All right, let's get back to vinyl. Splatter vinyl, colored vinyl, black vinyl. Any opinions on those?
Yeah, I tend to, I was led to believe initially that colored vinyl was not as good a quality as black vinyl, but I guess that's not really true. I don't seek out colored vinyl. Sometimes when I get it, I'm like, oh, that's cool. So I don't collect colored vinyl. I tended to be more a black vinyl kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
But as time went on, you'd sort of get records. You're like, oh shit, look, it's colored. Okay. So I'm okay with it, but I don't seek it out.
Who are some of your go-to guitar players?
Well, I tend like with blues, like I'll tend to listen to like the Freddie King and I'll listen to some Albert King and I'll still listen to Muddy Waters. And, I listen to I've been listening to that first Beefheart record a lot. And I think that's probably Rye Cooter out there and that other weirdo that plays with Beefheart. Howlin' Wolf, I like Hubert Sumlin. And I still listen to a lot of Stones, but in terms of go-to guitar players, you know, I'll listen to Velvet Underground, but I don't listen to a lot of straight up guitar stuff.
Mm-hmm. How about current stuff like Earthless, Isaiah Mitchell, those guys?
Oh, that guy. Yeah, I love that guy. I love Earthless. I've got that record. Yeah. I mean, I've got the first couple of Earthless record. I was listening to that a lot. Big riffs. I like that. That's a good record. Yeah. What else you got?
Oh, well, I go far into the punk field. So off. Yeah. Dimitri Coates, Keith Morris.
I've been listening to that band Earth. That weird duo from the Pacific Northwest. Mm-hmm. Kind of like deep, slow, droney riffs.
Do you get into things like Sleep? Those sort of bands?
I've listened to some of that. I don't know, I'll give it a go sometimes once or twice. And I don't know, there's a lot of bands around, what is it? The Swans.
Oh yeah.
And that band Wand. Now I'm just rhyming bands. There's a whole psych rock matrix of stuff that I don't put a lot of work into. But and it's hard for me to remember a lot of things. Mm-hmm. I've been listening to fucking Canned Heat lately.
Oh, okay.
Because I play, for some reason I don't know that I put them in the proper perspective. I'm kind of a blues based guy, but I don't want to be listening to Canned Heat. But the way they rocked out that old stuff, I mean, they really did something not quite a little different than everyone else because they were kind of blues purists. But there's something about they kind of redid the drive of it and really made this blues rock in a way that nobody else did. And, I never really realized that until I was rewatching Woodstock, and they were playing I don't know. I can't remember the last time I saw the Woodstock movie. I was probably drunk and in high school. So I was just fast forwarding through the performances and I watched Canned Heat and I was like, oh my God, these guys mean business, and that guitar player, that guy, Vestain or whatever his name is, one of them, and the other guy, that guy who died, Wilson, I was like, this is something in and of itself. But you kind of dismiss them because they're had a couple of hits, but who cares? But I've been kind of digging in a little deeper with him. Yeah, it's pretty good.
You got a copy of John Lee Hooker's Serve You Right to Suffer?
I might. I just paid some big money for a live John Lee Hooker somewhere. So I can't remember what it was, but it was a rare one.
Serve You Right to Suffer to me is just goosebumps throughout. I mean, that's
really,
you're familiar with John Lee Hooker's career, how, he would record for various labels. Sometimes the songs were there, but the label support wasn't, or the production wasn't there. And when it comes to John Lee Hooker, that album is where he had label support, a great backing band, some fantastic songs, and terrific production. And Serve You Right to Suffer has songs like Decoration Day and some of those. It's, to me, that's the heart of the John Lee Hooker catalog, in my opinion.
Holy shit! I don't know if I have it. Thanks for the heads up. It's on Impulse.
It's on Impulse. I'll send you a copy. That's one of the records I buy
really?
multiple copies of. So I tell you what, don't buy it. Allow me to send you one.
Thanks, pal.
Oh, good. So, Marc, thank you so much for coming on the show. Again, this is the 400th episode, and I couldn't think of a more appropriate person to have celebrating this with me. I've been a fan from your very early career, not sold out, tickets still available. Those were pivotal in my understanding of comedy, my appreciation, and again, I can't thank you enough for not only coming on today's show, but for just being inspirational for my life and career.
Oh wow, thanks, man. I appreciate you having me. I hope I did the show justice.
You are. You are a record nerd. Don't sell yourself too short on it. Do you remember your 400th episode, by the way? Do you remember your guest?
Who was it? Was it Steve Brill, or was it Birbiglia interviewing me? I don't remember. Who was
Iggy
it?
Pop.
That was my
Pop.
400th?
Yeah.
No kidding. I thought we always did something special on the 400th.
Yeah, Iggy Pop in your garage with no shirt.
Yeah.
Actually, did he wear a shirt? Did he wear a shirt? Or was it?
He took his shirt off on my deck. He got there, he went out on the deck, started stretching, and then took his shirt off. He came with his shirt, took it off for the interview.
They made him put one on for the airplane.
Maybe.
All right. Mark, thank you so much, mate.
Take care, Nate. Thanks a lot, man.
See you around. Bye.
Bye.
Oh, man. My absolute honor having Mark on the show. So pleased we got him for episode 400. I've been trying to get him for 100, episode 200, episode 300, and now I finally got it for 400. All my dreams are coming true here on the Vinyl Guide podcast, and I want to thank each and every one of you for listening to this show and always treating me so well, always giving us the great reviews, always sharing online. That is hugely appreciated, and it is not lost on me. I really do appreciate all the listeners and support, the notes, the kind words, the thumbs up, all that stuff on social media, and the nice things that people say. That is always appreciated. Don't forget there is an extended version of this episode as well as a video version at patreon.com/vinylguide. All you show supporters, head up there and enjoy those extra bits, video, audio, and all. That's it for episode 400 of the Vinyl Guide. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please share these episodes on your social media. Put them on Facebook, tweet them out on Twitter, share them in the Reddit forums and the Facebook groups, and share them with your record nerd friends. That is always appreciated, especially when you leave us positive reviews. Pop up on iTunes, give us a 5 out of 5, or Spotify, I think, gives you a 5 out of 5. You can always say something nice, give us a nice review. That's hugely appreciated. And we'll be back shortly with a brand new episode. So until we talk next time, get out there and buy some records, people. Cheers.
That's it for this episode of The Vinyl Guide. Send your thoughts to Nate at thevinylguide.com or follow or tag us on Instagram at Vinyl Guide. Until next time, keep spinning.